Jim, Carlin, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, for people that haven't gotten the chance to meet you, tell me about yourself. Introduce yourself to voters.
I'm Jim Carlin. I've had a law practice in Sioux City for about 35 years. Did some nonprofit work. I helped founded a nonprofit called the Giving Exchange. Actually ran a nursing home visitation project for like 18 years. And then I got over into politics and ran for the State House and the Senate. Been married to my wife, Donna, for 30 years. She was actually my very first client as a lawyer. So 3 kids, 3 grandkids, and yeah, the grandkids definitely changed the perspective on the deal for you. You start thinking about them.
Do you think they have a part to play in why you're still going in this politics thing?
They do. When I look at the generations that are following us, I have real concerns about just the basic economic metrics that I'm seeing, like how much of your income is going to go to the government, to the bank, or an insurance company. And when I do the math and I look at the student loan debt service, it's really compelling that the younger generation can't afford a house, that first-time homebuyers are now 39 years old. So starting a family, owning a house, things like that, the American dream, it's different, and we need to get that back.
How does your law practice dealing with the nursing homes, how does that influence your time in politics?
When you visit nursing homes, you get a very raw, real take on how people's lives are affected in nursing homes, the quality of care they get, just being treated like human beings. As a lawyer, 30 years of representing middle-class people, seniors, everyday working people, those people have kind of defined my professional career, and that actually was kind of a perfect backdrop to getting into politics, really.
So what are some of the other things you're focusing on?
Well, for instance, I think we need to bring back free markets and accountability. I'm concerned about the government's role in taking away free markets. We have free markets, that means we have voices as consumers, as farmers in the marketplace. And I'm concerned about the Federal Reserve's role on housing costs. During COVID, and the result of that is 60% increase in housing costs. There needs to be accountability, there needs to be audits, and maybe we need to limit the scope of influence that the Federal Reserve has on monetary policy, because there's really no accountability there. Obamacare, I don't think anybody believes right now our health care is better. I've seen premiums double and triple, we all know that. And so when you look at the quality of care you're getting, you now have deductibles $10,000, $15,000. And then you look at the student loans. They got federalized. When they got federalized, our young people only had one person to go to, the United States government. That's a problem because there's no competition on interest and on their debt service, and the terms of it, it's not dischargeable. So monopoly control of money with the Fed, monopoly control of healthcare with just Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and United Healthcare, and student loans, and collectively add those things. The American people are not being treated fairly economically, and I think the government plays a really substantive role in that.
How do you take, those ideas in a place as high as the Senate?
Right.
How do you, make changes, bring benefits back to Iowa?
Sure. Well, one of the things I learned as a state legislator was this: you don't need a majority to get things done. You just need kind of a strong-willed minority of people to say no to some things, and you can get things done. When I was in the State House, I did some work on the Veterans Trust Fund that resulted in veterans getting 10 times as much money in a couple of years after I wrote that bill. Exposed elder abuse in the Iowa Veterans Home. Got an active shooter bill done for every public and private school in the state of Iowa. Things like that. And so what you learn is, also with 3 Senate colleagues, we got the heartbeat bill done, which was the same heartbeat bill that Texas copied that made it to the United States Supreme Court. And Iowa started all that. So what you learn is you don't have to have a majority. You just have to have a couple of strong people willing to fight for what they believe is right.
You know, obviously this race had a pretty big shakeup not too long ago with
Right.
Ernst choosing not to run for re-election, Hinton
Sure.
stepping in and getting that Trump endorsement. How does that
Absolutely.
change things for you? How do you compete with that?
Well, in some ways, the frame it's kind of the same. And in others, there were differences between Ashley Hinton and Joni Ernst. Joni Ernst kept her promise. She said, I'm only going to serve 2 terms. She kept her promise. Ashley Hinton, you know, I think a lot of the Republican base love President Trump. I didn't get the endorsement, wish I had. But when he was not in the White House, she voted to certify the election. She reached out to President Trump or to President Biden in a gesture to try to work with him almost immediately. She voted to keep Liz Cheney in leadership. And you know, the night before the caucus, she appeared at an event for Nikki Haley. So like, here's the thing. When he's not in the White House, she's not really supporting President Trump. And I think people are concerned about his legacy being preserved. And I think I'm a better choice for that. I think he has done a lot of good things. Social Security not being taxed. Seniors needed that break, especially when you had all that massive inflation. Tips not being taxed. Overtime not being taxed. Things like that. I mean, the spending thing, I am concerned about. I am very concerned about our nation's debt service because we can't keep kicking the can down the road, because at some point, you could be looking at a debt crisis, and we have to deal with that responsibly by limiting our money supply growth and things like that. There are remedies to kind of right the ship. Not saying we can stop crises, but I think we can manage them and get through them better.
What would you say to Iowans? Why should they choose you to represent them in the Senate?
Right. Well, the thing is in politics, politicians use narratives and platitudes, and they use a lot of sound bites. The thing you need to look at is the votes. The votes locate people. So if you look at the body of work that I did on the legislative webpage, and you look at the things I authored, whether it was to keep children safe in school, to protect elderly folks, like the senior property tax freeze, especially now. When you look at the body of work, and there's a lot there, I think it locates me. I think it distinguishes me because the work I did was for the people of Iowa. I think the voters right now, I don't think they really believe they're being defended. I don't think they really trust and believe that their interests are being looked after. I'm asking them to give me that chance to prove to them that I won't betray that trust, that I will represent them, and that I'll look after them.